Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome so much. Welcome to the University of Michigan School of Social Work Introduction to Field Education webinar. We're really happy to have you here on this Zoom. We have a lot of information for you today, so bear with us, but we also just want to let you know this will be recorded. So we'll go over some announcements shortly. My name is Erin Kong. I'm the field director here, and I'd like to introduce my co-presenter for the first part. So Christina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Dadswell. I'm a field faculty here at the University of Michigan School of Social Work, Office of Field Education. So glad to see you all today.
All right, everyone. So we'll get started. And again, this is going to be recorded. So feel free to take notes, but also we'll put this on the website. So just a few reminders for today. Please note that this presentation is primarily geared towards students who will begin field in fall 24. We know many of you might be starting field winter 24 as well. You are welcome to stay on and hear information, but we're also going to hold another one of these sessions for you all specifically. So all are welcome, but specifically, we're going to be speaking to those of you who are starting field in fall, the fall semester. For those starting in field, I just put this, winter 25, we're actually going to hold a similar session on September 3rd. So if you want to hold that date and time, it'll be September 3rd from 12 to 1:30. That will also be recorded and will be virtual. So feel free to save the date for that if you are starting field next winter. Students starting in the online part-time MSW program will have a special field webinar during your first term in the program, since your application timeline is a little bit different. So you'll be hearing from us later. Please hold your questions as they may be answered throughout this presentation. If you really can't hold your question, you're able to leverage the Q&A function, and we have several people who are moderating that chat, so feel free to enter those questions there. And that is the Zoom function. This is going to be recorded and the slides will be posted online following this presentation. If you have any accessibility needs for this meeting today, please feel free to tell us via direct message in the chat or the Q&A, or in any way that's best for you. And we'd be happy to try to be as accommodating as possible. Okay, let's get into it. So welcome. Again, this is our lovely field team. This is half of it. I'm going to share two slides. Again, my name is Erin Kong. I'm the new field director, started last August. Really excited to welcome you to the field part of your education. We'll be excited to see you at Seed Week, which will also be held in late August, and you'll get more information about that later. We have two assistant directors, one in the online program, Dr. Natisha Robinson, who's also on this call, is one of our assistant directors, and I will be hiring a residential assistant director soon. We also have an amazing administrative team who are listed there, who really make sure that this office holds us accountable and make sure that administratively everything on the back end works smoothly and communicates with y'all in a timely way. So our office manager, Sarah Castillo, is helping to provide support today. So thank you so much, Sarah. In addition, here's your field faculty team, our amazing field faculty who will be your professors for field. They are the folks who will walk you through and support you through field from placing through your field placement. Many of them are on this call as well, and you'll hear from several of them later today as well. Okay, a little bit about just kind of the learning acquisition methods and just to frame field very briefly. So there's very different methods for skill development, and we know that studies show that about 10% of development occurs through formal training like classes or e-learning or books. Another 20% comes through feedback from observing and working with mentors, coaches, and leaders. And the rest, the 70%, occurs through on-the-job experiences, tasks, and problem solving. This is really why 25%, so a quarter of your graduate social work curriculum consists of your field education experience. We are very proud to be the office that helps you really practice the things that you're learning in the classroom into actual field experiences and experiential learning. But what is field education? Field education is your opportunity for you to take what you learn in the classroom and apply these concepts and theories in a real-world learning environment. For your field education courses, you'll be placed in a field site based on your selected pathway, your setting of interest, and learning goals. The types of field sites can include mental health agencies, community and social service organizations, hospitals and healthcare settings, K-12 schools, higher education settings, offices of elected officials, and many other settings where social work practice takes place. Please note the hour requirements listed here on this slide. The hour requirements will depend on your curriculum schedule. Students tend to spend the equivalents of 2 to 3 days per week in field. So again, just pay attention to how many total hours that is. It doesn't have to be whole days. You can do half days, but it's really a big chunk of your week. And so when you think about the ways in which you're going to balance classes with field and work and family life and friends and all the other things and commitments that you have, it's really important now to really sit down and think about your schedule and how this is going to impact you. Why is field important? It really requires you to commit and practice the core values of the social work profession. The core values including service and social justice, dignity, and worth of the person, the importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. Social work involves a commitment to lifelong learning, frequent critical thinking, and self-reflection, and understanding your use of self and engaging with and helping others. Do all these. All of your field experiences in field, from practicing specific social work skills and establishing collaborative working relationships to navigating ethical dilemmas and challenging interpersonal interactions, are important and valuable learning opportunities. In both the classroom and in field, you are beginning to develop your social work professional identity and future career goals. It's important for you to recognize you are here not as receivers of service, but rather to actively participate and engage in the education to prepare yourselves to be providers of service to others. Really, we want to reinforce that everything you do in field is going to be a learning opportunity. In field, you'll practice skills and behaviors that will help you to become a competent beginning level social worker. The Council on Social Work Education, or CSWE, is our accrediting body. It has identified the professional competencies that you must practice and develop before graduating from our program. You'll learn more about these core competencies once you begin the program, and all of our field placements will give you an opportunity to practice and develop these transferable core social work skills. Field is also the place where you will need to learn and practice how to navigate ethical concerns that commonly arise in all settings where social workers find themselves. And you'll need to do this in accordance with the Social Work Code of Ethics. You'll learn more about our professional code of ethics as well throughout our program. So it's really important to know and to reinforce that field is one of your classes. There will be several people involved in teaching this class over the course of the time that you're in this program. First is your University of Michigan School of Social Work field faculty. This person, many of them on this call, is the field, this person is the faculty instructor for all of your field courses and works in the School of Social Work Office of Field Education. This individual acts as the liaison between the school and the field site or agency, and will be there to guide you every step of the way throughout your field experience. They'll monitor your learning, will be also the ones who will assign the grades for all of your field courses. Your field faculty is dedicated to helping you develop the fundamental skills and competencies of the social work profession. So please take every opportunity to connect with them and tap into their knowledge and expertise. And most importantly, if you need support, don't ever hesitate to reach out. The second person you'll be collaborating with is your field instructor. This person is typically, but not always, an employee at the field site. Your field instructor will be a qualified MSW who is volunteering their time to provide you regular supervision and mentoring, and will work with you and your School of Social Work field faculty to establish learning goals and competency-based assignments and activities during each semester that you're in field. Your field faculty and your field instructor in the agency will meet with you together at least one time each term to review your learning progress. We call this a site visit. In addition, your field instructor will also complete an end-of-term evaluation of your learning and performance that will be submitted to the field faculty and serve as a component of your final field grade for that term. Your field faculty is who makes the final determination of the grade that you receive. And finally, depending on the field site that you're in, you may also be assigned a task supervisor. This is the person who provides day-to-day oversight of your learning. Typically, the task supervisor is not a social worker, although it can be, and maybe someone from another professional discipline, but is very familiar with the work at the field site. This person will have regular contact both with your field instructor and the field faculty to help evaluate your learning and to think about your learning goals and responsibilities. One of the questions we often receive is, where will my field placement be? For students living in the Southeast Michigan area, many of our existing field placements are located throughout Southeastern Michigan and Northern Ohio. For students in our online program who live out of state, or for those of you who live outside the Southeast Michigan area, we will work with you to find a field placement in your local area. We have many already established agencies throughout the United States, and we are constantly seeking additional agency partners. Students really should expect to travel 30 to 60 minutes one way to get to field. So let me just pause there and reinforce. The transportation expectation really is that you would travel up to 30 to 60 minutes one way to field. And so we really want to remind you and help you to start to prepare for that now, because that can take a lot of logistics and a lot of coordinating on your end. Some of you may be interested though in the national and or international field placement options if you're GASP scholars. And so those options occur during the spring summer term, but we'll talk about that in a few slides. Going back to transportation, to reinforce that, it will be important to consider how you will travel to and from field. If you have access to a car or other personal transportation, you should expect to use that. For those planning to complete your field in Michigan, please note our public transportation is very limited. We mentioned this now to help you begin to prepare to enter our program. Transportation of field is the responsibility of the student, and we recognize though for some this can be quite a challenge. So we understand that some of you may not drive or won't have access to a car, and we want to be transparent that this may limit potential field placement options. Please be sure to indicate that you do not have a car on your field application when you apply, so we can be aware of this as we consider appropriate field placement options. Some may wish to explore whether your current employment can also serve as your field placement. This is called an employment-based placement. There are multiple requirements and a separate application is required. I've highlighted a few of the major requirements here. This is not the full details and not the full application, but just so that you can start to see whether where you currently work might be able to serve as your field placement at the same time. Your proposed employment-based placement must be able to meet your planned pathway. So that's essentially the concentration that you're choosing here at the school, and be able to find tasks that will meet the CSWE competencies. Your agency must be willing to pursue the approval process. There's quite a lot of paperwork involved and commitment on their end to pursue this process, so they must be committed to that. Your agency must be willing to support the number of field hours required. Again, some of this can occur concurrently while you work, and in other times, if you're working in a different department of your agency, they may need to release you at certain times during the workday. And again, that must be supported by your immediate supervisor. And then finally, your agency must have an MSW on staff who meets current field instructor requirements. And again, those specific requirements are on the application, and you can find more about that once you apply. The employment-based placement process begins with the same process as applying via the field application, which we will go over very shortly. A note about entering your field placement. It's really important to recognize that entering field really means that you're entering a new and unfamiliar community. Learning the culture, the norms, the purpose, and rules of this new community will be a part of your early learning and requires your time, attention, and intention. Your field sites understand that you're there to learn, but they are also committed to their mission and the provision of services to their clients and communities. Although you'll be coming into field as a learner, your field sites will have expectations that you are able to meet certain standards. Our School of Social Work is fully committed to supporting and educating students as they prepare to enter the social work profession. Given the ethical responsibilities of professional social work practice to promote and protect the well-being of the clients and communities we serve, our school has developed technical standards for students that not only apply and focus on academic performance, but also emphasize the abilities and attributes essential for our profession. You were all asked at admission to review and acknowledge that you were able to satisfy these technical standards with or without reasonable accommodations. These standards apply in the classroom, in your field placements, in our school, in our university, and in the broader community and societal context. So please ensure you familiarize yourself with these standards. And the main standard headers are listed there around communication, intellectual and cognitive skills, and emotional and behavioral readiness. As you prepare for field, I do have a few pieces of advice that we'd like to share with you that we hope will help you have a successful learning experience. First, you will need to own your learning and manage your own expectations. As you prepare in field, I encourage you to embrace what you are learning, even though it will likely be different than what you expect. To be successful, you will need to be open-minded, adaptable, flexible, patient, and active to seek out opportunities for your growth and development. The more you put into your field experience, even if it's different from what you expected, the more you are going to get out of it. Second, it's also important for you to learn to function and navigate discomfort, anxiety, and ambiguity, both in the classroom and in field. Dealing with difficult situations, conversations, and circumstances is the nature of our profession. As a social worker, it's important for you to prepare yourself to experience a range of emotions, including frustration and anxiety. Please know this is normal, expected and necessary. A critical aspect of becoming a social worker is developing the skills and ability to function effectively in your social work role, even when your emotions are elevated. Learning how to lean into discomfort and uncertainty, using supervision, and asking for help from others when needed are essential skills that you must develop and will use throughout your social work career. Third, I think it's important that you be willing to make mistakes. Your best learning will occur when you are willing to try new things and understand that you're going to make mistakes. You'll never be perfect, and expecting this from yourself and others will only create unnecessary frustration and can actually lead to burnout. Social work is a field of gray, where every situation is unique. Your professors, field instructors, and field faculty won't be able to provide you a script to follow, but rather you'll need to be able to use critical thinking in the moment and integrate learning to be optimally effective in your role as a social worker. Please understand this takes time and practice. So even if you're uncertain of exactly what to do, we encourage you not to hang back, but rather to say yes to opportunities and new challenges. My fourth piece of advice is to be patient with all that you have to learn. There's no way for us to teach you everything there is to know about social work during the 12 or 16 months you'll be in our program. Our expectation is that when you graduate, you'll be an excellent beginning social worker. Even once you become a fully licensed social worker and can practice independently, you will still benefit from mentoring and consulting with others. Remember that this is a lifelong learning profession. It's expected that learning in field will progress over time. What you will learn in your first term will be different and should be different than what you learn in your final term. However, the pace of this is different for each and every student and in each and every field placement. So please be mindful of not comparing your experiences with what your colleagues might be doing. We encourage you to have open dialogue with your field instruction team to understand the pace and approaches that best fit your learning and the needs of the field site, as well as your clients and communities that you're serving. Finally, it's really important for you to seek, want, and use feedback. I suspect all of you would say you'd want our field faculty and field instructors to give you feedback if they have concerns about how you're doing. Yet we know that when we receive this type of feedback, it doesn't always feel good. So please don't shy away from it. In fact, you should ask for feedback often, be thankful when you get it, and always be willing to self-reflect and use this feedback to enhance your learning and the development of social work skills. Explore early in your relationship with your field instructor and your field faculty how you best receive feedback. I would also strongly encourage you to discuss with them the best way for you to be able to provide feedback to them, especially if you have concerns. So with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague, Professor Dadswell, and she'll discuss the application and placement processes.
Thank you so much, Professor Kong. Again, I'm Christina Dadswell. I'm a field faculty here at the University of Michigan School of Social Work in the Office of Field Education. And today I'm going to tell you about the application and the placement process. So keep in mind that after you're officially accepted at an agency, there will be another orientation for you in late August that will be comprehensive and cover everything you need to know about field placement. Today, though, I want to tell you about the first steps before that, which include the application and the placement process, so you're aware of how that works and what it entails. Next slide, please. Thank you. For students who are starting in fall 2024, so this coming fall, the field applications will open for you to submit between May 20th and May 31st, with a final due date of May 31st at 5 p.m. I suggest you apply as early as possible, but you can submit it anytime during that window. I also suggest that you start preparing your materials, including your resume and goal statement, between now and May 20th, so that they're ready to submit when the field application opens. And I will talk more about that shortly. Again, Professor Kong said this at the beginning, but for anyone who joined late, today we are focusing on students who are starting this coming fall term. If your plan is to start in winter 2025, the process is similar and you're welcome to stay and listen, of course, but if you're not starting until next January, then you won't submit your application until September. And there will be a separate meeting just like this today for those starting in winter 2025. So if you're not starting until January, feel free to hop off this meeting now since you will attend this meeting later, or feel free to stay on if you'd like to hear more. Next slide. Keep in mind, there are some caveats or exceptions to the application times that I just discussed that I want you all to be aware of. This may or may not apply to you. There are some reasons why a student would apply for field at a different time than the dates I just gave, and really there are three main reasons that would require a student to apply at the non-standard time. If you are a 16-month student planning on doing a national field placement, or if you are in a scholar program, which includes a national or global field placement component, Examples could be the National Community Scholar Program, Jewish Communal Leadership Scholar, planning on doing a national placement, or the Global Activities Scholar Program. Second reason you may apply to Field at a different time is because you are entering the program with transfer credits and you could complete the program in fewer terms, or because there are specific needs at the placement site, like the VA hospital, for example. And third, and lastly, a third reason you may potentially have a different application time would be if you're a dual degree candidate. Any of these three situations can impact a student's field application deadline. If you are a 16-month student interested in doing a national field placement, you would actually need to apply and start your field placement a term early. This is because national field placements take place in the spring-summer term, so they would actually take place in spring-summer 2025, which is early May through mid-August. Therefore, instead of waiting and applying in September for field to start in winter of 2024, if you are doing a national field placement, you would need to apply soon and start field in the fall of 2024. This would allow you to spend 2 terms in a local field placement, then you would do a different field placement at a national site for your spring-summer 2025 term. If you're interested in a national placement and you're doing a 20-month, and you are a 20-month student, you would have to request to switch to the 16-month curriculum and also apply for field this May. This is because 20-month students are not enrolled in classes over the spring-summer term, and that's actually when national placements take place. If you're interested in considering a national placement, please reach out to the Office of Field Education, our office, to discuss. You also need to connect with the Office of Student Services and Enrollment as well, and also your field faculty eventually, to discuss your course planning. If you're in a dual degree program, you should connect with the Office of Student Services to discuss your overall course planning, which will include when you would be in field. In many cases, dual degree with a master in public health, field would start in your second year. If you're interested in a global placement, or I'm sorry, a global independent study, which is not a global field placement, those are two different things. This program is of shorter duration and it requires plenty of advanced planning. If you are interested in global independent study, reach out to our Office of Global Activities directly at this email, and they'll help you think about whether or not you'll need to adjust your field schedule. If you're any of these, for example, global placements or some national placements, students are initially applying to do 2 semesters at one placement, then applying again separately for their final semester. That's a separate process, and you will be contacted. Overall, know that in these situations, your process will be different, and you should plan to be in contact with their office. If you have any questions or you need clarification about your field placement application due date, please make sure you contact our office. We would much, much rather have you contact us than to have you miss a deadline that would be important for your learning. Lots of new field students have questions. We anticipate that, and we want you to know we're always here to help you. To make this easiest for you to communicate with us, we actually set aside time for field office hours. In your undergraduate experience, I expect that many of your professors held office hours in which they set aside times for students to come in right during that hour and freely ask questions. We created the same model for field students preparing to apply for field. We faculty have set up 10 office hours just for you, just for students getting ready to apply for field placement, and we scheduled a lot of them for your convenience. You don't need to register to attend. It's just drop in anytime within that hour time slot. The Zoom links are posted on the incoming field student website linked here. And keep in mind, these drop-in hours are Eastern Standard Time. Field faculty will be at these office hours, able to answer your various questions about the application process, field agencies, unique student needs, and questions about the other global and national placements I just discussed. There really are a variety of reasons students have questions while applying to field, so you're welcome to any and all of these sessions. Your experience and your needs are important to us. We want to make sure you have plenty of opportunity to connect with us faculty and feel very welcome and supported in this process. Our placing process is a dynamic process. Let me explain a bit about the placing process and how aspects of the agency, as well as student needs, both play a role in the placing process and finding a match. In terms of the agencies, before they're ever available for you to consider, field agencies go through a vetting process. It includes a lengthy process to establish a legal agreement between the field site and the University of Michigan. Once agencies are approved, they will relay how many students they are willing to accept and for what semesters. Some sites may only have capacity for one student, and others, like the U of M Medical Center, can take more than 40. Some sites only take students for certain semesters or for certain program pathways. Site availability is constantly being updated throughout the year, and it fluctuates continuously, depending on availability for them to provide training for certain student pathways. Additional considerations are that some sites require background checks and drug testing or require certain vaccinations, and that's determined by the agency itself, not the university. On the student side, there are many variables that play a role in the placement process, including the student's program schedule and their plan, the student's availability, the student's interests and pathway, and the student's access to transportation, as well as past experience they bring and how they present in the interview with the agency. You can rest assured that our faculty in our office have a great deal of experience in facilitating placement of students. And you'll have our support as you go through the placement process to secure a placement that will allow you to gain foundational level social work skills in your pathway. And those skills will be applicable to any endeavor you strive for post-graduation within that pathway. Keep in mind, you must choose a field placement that's listed under your pathway. Students can't choose a placement that does not list their specific pathway. Please also note we are requesting that students do not reach out directly to any prospective agencies. Our office has a long-standing relationship with our contracted agencies, and it's important for us to maintain our established communication channels, expectations, and processes. So thank you in advance for understanding and cooperating with that. Let's talk about the application process. Again, the application will open up online on May 20th, and you will receive an email reminder with the link. Remember that you will need to use your unique name, which is also your University of Michigan email. You'll use it often in the field placement process. Please be sure you have it set up and you're able to access that, as you will receive an important email from us on May 20th with the placement application link. We have a website that walks you through the field placement application process linked here on this slide. We will post these slides, as Professor Kong said, which have hyperlinks and this recording on our website following this webinar, so you can have access to all the resources linked here. The website lists the main steps you need as you begin to think about applying for field. This includes preparing to apply, composing and submitting your field application, interviewing, and preparing to start your field placement. Each step links to a page with information in detail about that particular step. This is a great resource on this process, but again, don't hesitate to reach out to us or come to our office hours, as mentioned earlier, if you have any questions. Now let's focus on the first few steps in detail. The field application will ask you to identify your priorities and select placement options. Every effort will be made to match you with a selected or similar agency that aligns with your pathway and goals. This really is a dynamic and constantly shifting process. Let's talk about what you need to have ready to attach to your online field application. In composing and submitting your field application, there are 2 items you will upload with your field placement application. The first is your goal statement, and the other is your resume. Those are the 2 parts, but you will need to combine them really into one document together. These are the materials that will be sent to the field placement site for them to see. Your goal statement is meant to give the field site an idea of what you're interested in and your current skill level, as well as your overall broad learning goals as an MSW student. From your materials, they will review what skills you'd like to learn, which will help them know if they're the right match for you as a site. The field site will also use your goal statement and resume as a writing sample, so please be mindful of that as you complete this. Check for spelling errors and grammatical issues, as potential field instructors will be considering this as they make their decisions. You will have the opportunity to review our database of current placement openings that includes a brief description of the organization or program and what students may expect in that placement. From that database, you will select your top 3 choices. Before the field faculty sends your materials to an organization, we review what you have submitted to determine fit based on your goal statement and what we know about the agency placement itself. Generally, we're sending your materials to your top choice first. It may be helpful to note that some placements may have very few students select this as a top choice, while other placements may have an abundance of students interested in that as their top choice. We may reach out to you if, after reviewing your materials, we think there may be a better fit that may not have the same level of student selection. We cannot guarantee you'll be placed at your top choices, but having your preferences gives us a good starting point to understand your interests. We will refer to you as available, and if what you were specifically looking for is not available, we will work hard to help you find another placement setting that's similar and allows you to gain those same types of transferable social work foundational skills that you can use after graduation. If your first choice for a field placement doesn't work out for any reason, for example, maybe they declined to interview you, or maybe you were interviewed but decided it's not the right option for you, then your materials will be sent to another field placement site after you've had the opportunity to reflect about that previous interview experience with your field faculty. Because you're applying for a field placement practicum experience rather than an employment position, your goal statement is very important, and it's different than a cover letter. It's important to make your goal statement general, an overview of your interests, your goals, your skills, and not address or customize it to a certain particular field placement that you picked as your first option, as you may be looking at other options as well. Please do not include personal information about your physical health, your mental health status, or any other personal information that you wouldn't typically include in a professional cover letter. Your resume is like any other professional resume, but it should emphasize any social work skills and experiences you have. Our Office of Career Services is a great resource to help you with this if you have questions, and they have resume guidelines and examples for you to peruse linked here. If you choose to, you are invited to submit your resume or goal statement to the Office of Career Services for the review. Their email is linked here. If you wish to have that assistance, keep in mind the Office of Career Services needs a minimum of about 2 weeks to be able to review your materials. That's minimum 2 weeks. So if you're interested in their services and support, please connect with them early. You will want to work on this and consider submitting this to them soon if you choose to connect with them so that you get your materials back in time to submit your application. Another important resource is for students with disabilities. Anyone who identifies as having a disability or as neurodiverse and wishes to is absolutely invited to connect with Services for Students with Disabilities, also known as SSD. Disability is one of many aspects of human diversity, and we're committed to creating an inclusive and equitable educational environment for students with disabilities, including in your field placement process. Sometimes students with disabilities find they require accommodations in field that they did not expect outside of the classroom. Field work can be different in many ways from the classroom environment with differing demands. If you already think or know that you need accommodations in field placement, you should directly contact Services for Students with Disabilities or Emily Weisler directly at this email address linked here. She works directly with our School of Social Work students, and you can get started that way. Contrary to what some students think, you don't need medical paperwork or a diagnosis in hand before setting up an initial meeting with SSD. If you're hesitant for any reason, remember that your health information is confidential and it stays at SSD. The only thing that's ever shared is your access and accommodation needs. And even those are only shared with whomever you ask SSD to share them with. If you choose to engage with SSD, students find that doing so early in the placement process tends to be the most helpful to them because their accommodations can be considered right from the beginning before placement happens. Let's now talk about next steps after you have submitted your application and what happens after you apply. Once you've submitted your field application, we will send you a confirmation email that we've received it and that you have been assigned to one of our field faculty for initial review. There are 10 field faculty in our office with more than 150 years of combined social work experience. We as faculty are all dedicated to helping you find a field placement that best fits your learning. We think of you as our future colleagues. We're fully committed to preparing you to join our social work profession. Your OFE placing faculty will review your application materials and selected placement sites. If appropriate, your materials will then be sent to the field instructor at the agency for review. You'll be notified when your resume and goal statement is sent to the field site. Because we are working with a large number of students, the process is not immediate. You will typically hear from field faculty within a few weeks of your application, but we do place students throughout the semester. Some of you may hear from us very quickly, and others may hear from us in a few weeks after submitting your application. If the field instructor at the field site would like to interview you, you will be sent an email connecting you with the field instructor. and the field site for you to reach out and set up an interview with them. After the interview, the field instructor will email the placing faculty here at the university to either offer or decline the student. If the student's offered a placement there, the field faculty will reach out to you as a student to confirm whether you are also accepting the placement. If either the field site or student determine the organization is not a match, the student will be notified and their OFE placing field faculty will pursue other field options, incorporating both agency and student feedback. If the agency decides to turn down the student, we will share any feedback we receive that can help you in your next interview. We are confident that all students will find a field placement that will meet their pathway area and learning interests and facilitate competency development. One of the questions that we often get is, what happens if I don't get an interview or I'm not accepted after I interview? First, don't worry. Please reach out to your placing field faculty as they may have feedback from the field site that can help you going forward. There may be nothing for you to do differently, and we will simply move on to the next opportunity. However, if there is specific feedback on the things that you can do to improve your interview skills or how you were able to articulate your previous experiences, we'll review that with you and talk through that. It's important for you to be aware that as a cohort, you're not all in the same spot in your skill development, and that's okay. It's possible that your current skill set isn't a match for the work and training provided at a specific field site. In these cases, you may need to reflect on your goals and how you've engaged with the field instructor during that interview. As an example, a student may want to do psychotherapy, and that may be their long-term goal. But the field instructor assessed in the interview that their skill development requires that they first improve their skills in engagement, assessment, and critical thinking before they are ready for psychotherapy cases. And this may be why they were not selected there. Remember to be self-reflective and be patient with all you have to learn. Whatever the reason for not getting the placement, please reach out to us so that we can help you learn from that interview and move forward in your development of social work skills and competencies. If a situation does arise in which a student is turned down after 2 interviews, or if the student rejects 2 field sites after 2 interviews, a field success meeting will be scheduled. This meeting includes the placing faculty, student, and the director or assistant director of field. The purpose of this meeting would be to identify any barriers to field placement success and develop an action plan moving forward. When you are accepted at an agency and you have confirmed with the field faculty that it meets your learning goals, then you will receive a notification email that you have been officially placed and will congratulate you on your field placement. We will also ensure that you know how to get in touch with your field instructor at your new field placement for next steps. I will now talk about what happens between the time when you've accepted a field placement and before you actually start there. Some field sites require an additional items for you to complete before you start field. So make sure to check in with your field instructor at the site before your field placement starts to see what's needed. It's not uncommon that health screenings, especially for healthcare field placements, or TB tests, drug testing, or background checks are required, especially if you are placed in field sites working with vulnerable populations such as children or older adults or people with mental illness. They may also want you to fill out one of their official applications with their own HR department. So you'll need to check in with your field instructor at the agency for this information. Please know the University of Michigan School of Social Work has a long-standing commitment to assist individuals with criminal conviction histories so they can pursue their MSW. We understand that some of you may have had contact with the legal system in your past, and for some, that may have actually been the inspiration that has led you to the field of social work. The state of Michigan and other states have set forth exclusionary criteria for criminal conviction histories of both felonies and misdemeanors for professionals working in certain settings with specific populations. This includes workers in hospital settings, adult foster care, work involving children, and psychiatric settings. As a result, there are some field placement settings that may not be available based on an individual's criminal convictions history. If you do have this type of history, you should inform our office before you start interviewing for field placements so that we can find a field placement that works for you. Even if you had something expunged from your records, sometimes background checks still show this history. So please let our office know so we can assist you in navigating your field placement selections. Please know we will not share this information with field placement sites without your permission. So the incoming field student website I referred to earlier has a section on preparing to start field. which includes topics you may want to discuss with your field placement before your first day, and also information on how to thoughtfully and appropriately enter the community in the organization in which your field site is housed. Even after you're placed, make sure that you're checking and responding to emails on your UMich account often throughout this coming summer to ensure you're getting all of the information and notifications from us, and nothing is delayed due to lack of communication between you and our office. You will need to look out for more information about your upcoming Seed Week orientation sent to you via your UMich email. You will attend pre-field orientation during that week, where we will further discuss details specific to your field course, and you'll get so much more information at that time. During Seed Week, you'll also need to read the field education course syllabus and review your assigned Canvas site for field, just like you would for any other course. I've given you a lot of information that I hope will be useful to you as you begin to think about the application process and prepare to apply for field soon. There are just a few additional points I want to make before I turn things over to my colleague Amy Vantine to talk about hospital and medical placements. We've created a resource page specifically for international students on the incoming field website. So if you're an international student, please make sure that you take a look at that. A few field sites may request a letter of recommendation around the time of the interview. If you waived your access to the letters of recommendations you submitted as part of your application to the MSW program, then you can't reuse those letters for this. And I touched on this previously, but all field sites must follow the Americans with Disabilities Act, also known as ADA, and provide reasonable accommodations if you have a disability. Two things to note about this. It's helpful to disclose to our office if you have access needs that require accommodations so that we can consider that when we help to place you. As an example, some field sites are in older buildings that were built before ADA became law and may have more barriers for some. That's just one example. Again, we will not share access needs with field sites without your permission. As I said previously, students with disabilities are encouraged to contact Services for Students with Disabilities so they can assist you in documenting and requesting any necessary accommodations you need. And this can happen at any point during your coursework, of course, right? But again, I recommend the earlier in the placement process, the better. Lastly, if you have an undocumented status currently, connect with the Office of Student Services for information regarding the field placement process, and they'll help you navigate that as well. Let me tell you a bit about licensure. All states have some sort of licensure available for social workers. If there's a chance you'll practice social work outside of Michigan after you graduate, know that each state has different licensing laws and requirements. Our program ensures that your field experience qualifies under the guidelines for Michigan licensure. To research what's required in your state or states you're considering practicing social work in, you can go to the Association of Social Work Boards website, which is the social work certifying body. And you can also contact our Career Services office for more information about that as well. Now I would like to hand it off to my colleague, field faculty, Professor Amy Vantine, who will tell you more about hospital-based field placements.
Thank you, Professor Dadswell. Good evening. It's great to be here with, looks like 129 of all of you this evening. I'm Amy Vantine, one of the field faculty here in the Office of Field Education, and I'm here along with my colleagues, Amy Brandt and Dr. Rachel Moscow, who are also field faculty here. And we tend to have a lot of the healthcare hospital-based placements, although other colleagues of ours here in the Office of Field Education may also have some health-based placements as well. But we tend to have the largest number of those, so we are frequently the ones to be speaking about these placements. We're going to really briefly touch on some of the primary aspects of hospital or medical healthcare-based placements, but I did want to just make mention that we are going to be doing a specific session regarding hospital and healthcare-based placements on May 2nd at 5 p.m. so that we'll go more in depth about these placements and the application process, things to be considering about those on May 2nd. So I'm going to just very briefly review a lot of information about those, but we'll go more in depth on that May 2nd session, which will also be recorded and available on our website. There will be a Zoom link on our incoming student webpage, and I'm going to try to put it in the Q&A as well after I'm done speaking, but wanted to let you know that as well. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So wanted to be able to talk about really briefly about different types of hospital placements, because a lot of times we'll have students that will think about, I want to be in a hospital, but they don't necessarily know what that means. And so when we think about hospital placements, hospital can mean physical medical placements, or psychiatry placements, inpatient psychiatric placements. And those are very different kinds of placements that people may have. They also will often think about hospital placements being therapy placements. And that is often not the case on inpatient kinds of placements for social workers. So always being able to think more in depth about what is the kind of social work that you're interested in practicing, being able to understand that within a hospital or healthcare-based placement, there are lots of different roles that social workers have. So again, physical, medical, psychiatric, inpatient, working in an inpatient setting versus ambulatory care or an outpatient, like a clinic setting when people come into, if you go to see your primary care physician, that's more of an outpatient or ambulatory care setting where social workers may work as well. And then also within healthcare placements are some more macro kinds of placements. Where there are project managers. Social workers do a lot of project management kinds of roles that may be in some areas that are very data driven, where they're working on a lot of hospital policies or developing a lot of hospital programs. And others are much more clinically driven, where they're developing working within interdisciplinary teams to be able to address very clinical needs for patients, but on a more macro scale. But there may be within that, as we call interpersonal practice light, as you might see in that description on that slide, where there may be opportunity for some direct patient communication. So there can be these mixes within some of these placements as well. We picked some pictures. These are pictures from Unsplash, but to be able to kind of demonstrate in these images that there are lots of different ways in which social workers are connected with patient care in a hospital setting. There, again, in these outpatient kind of clinic areas where patients are going home right after a social worker is seeing them. There may be on the inpatient where they're bedded and staying within a hospital setting. And also there's a lot of social workers that are doing a lot of virtual care now as well. So a lot of times social workers are providing care virtually on a computer. So lots of different ways in which social work is seeing patients through healthcare. For students that are placed in a hospital setting, many of the hospital placements do require additional time for students to be in those placements. Not all, but many of our hospital-based placements do require students to be in field 24 hours per week for all of the semesters that they're in field. So that is for most of our students an increase of at least their first semester, if not every semester. That is an increased number of hours in field. So students are generally using some of their elective credits to have more time in field. Most of our students find that that's a really good investment of their elective credits. They really appreciate that additional time for additional practice in field, but that is a commitment of additional time within their field placement. So we always want to make that really clear. And within that additional time for many of the hospital-based placements, that does include some didactic training within a particular student program. So many of the hospital-based placements, in addition to whatever particular clinical placement the student may have, there is often additional student training that's part of that 24 hours a week that they're in a placement. So there's a very comprehensive plan student program in a lot of those hospital placements. Next slide, please. Hospitals often have really specific requirements for students. And again, we'll talk about this in more depth at our special hospital session. But in general, hospitals often, all hospitals are really requiring proof of immunizations. There's a specific list of immunizations that hospitals require. And in some case, they want to see specific titers. So there's some blood work that students need to be able to demonstrate that they have this proof. Some hospital placements are requiring a current drug screen. And there's one hospital placement in particular that is also requiring BLS, or basic life-saving course. So again, there are unique things based on the hospital setting. So these are things that we would talk about and have available for you as you're making decisions about where you have some interest in being placed. Hospital placements also have differing interview processes. They have their own kind of unique formats for how they do interviews. Some are doing very large group interviews where a student may interview with multiple teams to try to identify a fit for a particular patient population, which can be really different than an individual interview that may happen in a lot of other kinds of field placements. And some hospital placements are very firm in the ways in which they are doing their interviews. So there's not a lot of flexibility in terms of the timing of when they're going to hold their interviews or the location. Many are requiring in-person interviews. So there's not a lot of flexibility with some hospital placements. So again, just want to be upfront with some of that. In general, for not only hospital, but all healthcare related placements, there is a requirement for students in all of these healthcare based placements for one of the interprofessional education classes that all students in healthcare based placements take this Social Work 714, which is a class offered only in a winter semester, but is an interprofessional education course that all students are expected to be taking that are in health-based field placements. So it's not only for hospital-based placements, but for all students that are even in community-based healthcare kinds of placements as well. So again, we'll talk about that in more depth later on. And next slide, please. So just generally kind of high-level highlights, what are some things that medical placements provide? They provide clinical experience in a variety of settings. And when I use the language around clinical, I like to really highlight that clinical is not only therapy. A lot of times people say, I want to do clinical work, and they're thinking that clinical means that I'm doing psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is one way that people practice clinical work. But as social workers, we practice clinical work in lots of different ways and in lots of different settings. And so in hospital settings, social workers are utilizing clinical skills in lots of different ways, but not often doing it in therapy only. Medical placements provide experience in working as part of a multidisciplinary team or interdisciplinary team. And it's a great opportunity because social workers work in interdisciplinary teams, not only in healthcare settings either, in lots of different ways in community settings where social workers are practicing with attorneys and other people from other disciplines as well. Working in a hospital setting, learning to work with people from other backgrounds are additional transferable skills to work in lots of different environments. Medical placements provide opportunity to work with various populations, lots of diverse populations that students are able to work with. And there's potential for exposure to work in lots of different environments between high acuity intensive care environments, crisis level emergency care, chronic health care, specialty care, and primary care, just to be able to list a few. And working in healthcare settings, there are many opportunities to work in all the levels of micro, meso, and macro. So they're great, a whole variety of different kinds of opportunities within healthcare settings. Just to name a few, the larger health systems that we work with in large part are Children's Hospital of Michigan, Henry Ford Health System, Michigan Medicine, Trinity Health System, and the VA Medical Center. Those are our largest placements in hospital health systems, but we work with additional systems as well, and many community health-based placements as well. So just wanted to highlight a few of those. And I think that's my last slide. I'm going to return now to my colleague, Dr. Rachel Noskow, to be able to talk specifically about the VA.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, so I want to touch base specifically about the VA placements because they are currently collecting applications at this moment. So their cycle for review of applications is different than our cycle. So if you think that you are interested in a VA placement, there's two things that you need to do soon. One of them is to email the field office, and I've included the email on the slide here, and ask them to open up your application early so that you can apply for the VA placements. when you go to the system, you'll see that there are different VA placements that are available to you, and you'll select your primary choice as your number one option for your field placement. If you put VA placements for options 1, 2, and 3, just know that you will only probably interview for your top choice if it is available at the time that I receive your application. So you'll get the application open by emailing our office. They will open it to you. And as soon as you possibly can, and I would recommend you do this like within a week, please write your goal statement and submit your resume. I will go into the application, select your field placements, upload it, and then I will receive it. I will review it. If I have any concerns, I'll reach out to you by phone and email directly so that I can address any concerns immediately. If I have no concerns, I will go ahead and send it to Michelle, who's the coordinator there. And you will know that because I will email you that I am making that step. So you also have my email address on the slide here itself. You can contact me with any questions. I think they have about 7 openings for fall for all the universities that are local. So EMU, Wayne State, Michigan State are all applying to these same openings. So it tends to be somewhat limited in the number of options that are available, but I want to make sure that if you are interested, I usually have about 4 or 5 students that are very interested in working with vets, and I would love to help you secure one of those options if possible. And yeah, any other specific questions, please just email me. And I think I'm handing it off to Professor Peterson, who is going to talk to you a little bit about school-based placement.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with my colleagues. I'm Stacy Peterson from the Office of Field Education. I have 2 other colleagues with me, Beth Sherman and Zainab Bousti. Would you all like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Beth Sherman. I'm an associate clinical professor, and I'm the faculty director of the school social worker specialization. Delighted to chat with you this afternoon.
Thank you, Beth and Stacy. I'm Zainab Bousti, and I'm also field faculty here at the Office of Field Education, and happy to be with all of you.
Next slide. Yep. So what we want to do to get started is just talk a little bit about what happens with school social workers. So we want to give you information to prepare you to work in schools. We want to give you information about the school social worker specialization and help you understand the placement process for schools. So you can follow the link to school settings, social work in school settings, once the PowerPoint is over and the recording is posted, but there will be a link here and we're gonna get you going. Next slide.
Yeah, and just to provide, school social work has been a really long profession within the profession of social work. Like, we started as school social workers, we were called visiting teachers in the early 1900s. So it's really been a pretty long historical aspect of social work practice. So in terms of school social work practice, we have a lot of different roles. A lot of times we're responsible for helping out with school climate and school culture, making sure that schools are safe and supportive for all students. And then we're also involved oftentimes in small group work, maybe supporting kids who are having some specific difficulties and need to acquire some additional skills, like, for example, kids who maybe have trouble regulating their emotions when faced with frustration. So we might provide direct instruction and guidance or small support groups to assist students with that skill set. And then also we have often have specific roles under the Individuals with Disability Education Act, which is helping evaluate students to determine if they qualify for special education. So and meanwhile, so we're working for sure with students, we're working with teachers and other school personnel, definitely, and also families and communities. So it's a real, a very complicated set of skills, and also interacting with a lot of different adults and students and members of the community. So for Michigan, so for the University of Michigan, our school social worker specialization is tailored for our state, and we're an approved training program for the Michigan Department of Education. So as that, students will need to be either in the welfare of children and families pathway or the interpersonal practice pathway. Occasionally students can be like in the community change or the, like say for the global pathway, but they would have to just meet with me specifically, and we come up with a little bit of a workaround so that they're taking some additional elective coursework on working with children and youth. But for sure, welfare of children and families and the interpersonal practice pathway. Then the next thing that students would need to do after they, as part of those pathways, they also need to take 2 classes, which are specific to school social work. So it's school social worker assessment and school social worker interventions, and those are both 3 credit courses. And then the final piece, which is part of what we're focusing on today, is they would also need to complete a field placement. Well, everybody needs to complete a field placement, but at least 500 hours of that field placement would need to be direct social work practice with children and youth. So IP, interpersonal practice, child welfare pathway, the 2 classes, and then the third thing is the 500 hours. So again, just to say that if students finish that when they graduate with their MSW, they also graduate with their school social worker specialization. You don't have to apply for it. I mean, it's always good to let your field faculty know that you're pursuing the field, the school social worker specialization, but there's no specific application process. And that when you graduate again, you'll be eligible for temporary approval as a Michigan Department of Education school social worker. Other states do, there isn't a national standard for school social workers, and so every state has their own requirements. So it is, ours are about in the middle. There are some states that are a little bit, have a few more requirements, and some have. I was just this afternoon looking up Texas. Texas has no requirements. So no specialized requirements other than having a social work license. So there's quite, a range, but if you're not planning to practice in Michigan when you graduate, it is good to check the Department of Education website where you're planning to practice and look into what out-of-state trained school social worker, what the requirements are. And of course, and also, as I've heard a lot already today, many of us are willing to help you, and I know I sure am. So if you have questions about what you might need to do in order to prepare for your future career, if you're not planning to work in Michigan, I'm happy to help you. Shall I, the school, yes, that's my part. Okay. I probably did the whole thing.
Thank you.
That's what I like to
Thank you,
do.
thank you, Beth. So I'm not gonna go into details about what the roles are for school social workers in the school setting, which includes engagement skills, assessment skills, intervention, advocacy, and evaluation. But I do want to emphasize, working in the school setting is a very unique experience, and it's pretty dynamic, and it really involves you to have the ability to be independent and flexible. So it's really important to be flexible because the school setting is such a fast-paced environment. It means that if you're used to having like a checklist or an agenda of what your day looks like, being in a school setting that's not going to be the case. Every day is going to be a new day, and you might be interrupted with crises or even just fire drills, where it may take 30 to 40 minutes out of your time working with students directly. So having that ability to be flexible really allows you to effectively respond to the immediate needs of the students in the schools. So you'll have to be detail oriented and efficient, working with both young adults or young, children and staff members and other community members, including parents and their families. So, it's not only about managing tasks, you're also, again, incorporating the roles of advocating for the student needs and being welcoming and supportive for all students. So I just wanted to touch base on that part.
So as usual, I've done my whole presentation on the first slide, but so I won't just bore everybody to death. But yes, interpersonal welfare of child and family pathway. It's open to our on-campus and also our online students. There's the 2 classes I already mentioned, and then the 500 hours of field with children, direct social work practice with children and youth. So it's interesting. We're right in a time of transition right now that some of the Michigan Department of Education rules related to school social work are being rewritten, but we remain and intend to and are expected to remain an approved program. So just when you complete these requirements, what you'll have is a note on your transcript that will say school social work specialization, but you'll also get something called an SSW Form 310. And what that is, it's a recommendation that once you're hired by a district, that district will apply for temporary approval on your behalf. So you certainly don't have to be remembering all this, just as you're entering the program, but just to let you know, it's a pretty standard approval process where we're considered educational preparation program. And so our program is approved. And the other nice thing is that if you do get the school social worker specialization while you're here at Michigan, a lot of other states do ask if out-of-state prepared social workers have completed an approved program. And because you have, then that will bypass a lot of additional training. So it's pretty, even though requirements vary from state to state, many ask whether or not you've completed an approved program. And so if you do, then you have. And so I already said that, but for sure, it's difficult sometimes to dig through other state Department of Education's website, but if you use the search term out-of-state prepared school social workers or out-of-state prepared pupil personnel, support personnel, you can often find it. And if you can't, then just, of course, feel free to touch base with me. And I'm happy to help you search like what the credentials are.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the placement process for school-based placement. So one of the things we want to let you know is that public schools have a typically September to June schedule. So if you're placed in a school, you will follow a different schedule. A lot of times people will ask, if I'm 16-month, can I do a school-based placement? And typically the answer is no, because the bulk of your hours will happen in spring, summer, and that's when schools are closed. Even if they do offer us, like people say, can I do summer school? Those summer school programs are typically 6 to 8 weeks, and they don't give you enough hours to meet your field requirement. Another important thing when being placed in a school in Michigan, when you work with vulnerable populations, you have to have a background check. And sometimes people will say, well, I had a background check, at home, or I'm coming from another state with a background check. Each particular school and district may ask for something else. They can ask for their own requirements. So that's something you would discuss at your interview. Another thing that is often requested when you are looking to be placed in a school is that you have references. Students will ask, can I use my reference material for my admission? And the answer is no. The references that you got to come into the program were for a specific purpose. And so if you know that you're looking for a school-based placement, you want to queue your references up. So maybe either get a couple of reference letters or ask people in advance, will you be a reference for me? And this is for my field placement, not for my enrollment. Many schools will also ask for certain immunizations and health requirements. So you may need to have a current, we often see TB tests. They ask for certain vaccinations. You may need to show proof of that. And so you want to be prepared if you are serious about working in school. And the registration for school and field hours is going to be a little different. So for example, if you're an advanced standing student who typically follow 4-4-4 credit schedule, you might do a 6 and 6, and we can talk more about that when you're here. But your registration will allow you to be placed in a school. And often what'll happen in school placements is, I don't know about you all, but when I went to school, we had to go to school even if it snowed. There are a lot of snow days, there's power outages, there's election days. And so your hours will be off when compared to our Michigan calendar. We will work with you to have a plan to make sure you get your hours. You might get a temporary grade while you're waiting to complete your hours. So right now our term ends, today is the last day of field, or this week. There are people that will get a grade, like a placeholder, because their term extends beyond the standard calendar. So we want you to know that there's a special grading policy. And even if for people that are graduating, we've worked with our liability office and insurance. So they're going to graduate on May 5th, and they'll still be in placement until the end of June. And it's really important that if you take a school placement, you know that there is a requirement that you stay here for the entire school year. It's in your professional best interest to do so. And we will work with you and partner with you, but that's the placing process. So you're on a different timeline. You will definitely have to do a background check. You will need to have references. Be prepared to have special immunizations or ask about it or be asked about it. And there's special grades to make sure you are there during the school year and you have our support. That's the placing process if you want to be placed in a school. Next.
Thank you, Stacy. So, the school social work specialization is a popular choice
Very.
for university, and some may want it as their primary job post-graduation, or like what I did, I actually received my specialization as just to be more marketable post-graduation as like a plan B. So we also often hear from our alumni that they wish that they took the specialization before graduating. And so it's much easier to complete the specialization when you are a student in the MSW program than adding it later on into your career. So I just kind of wanted to share that information with all of you. So here is our contact information, and please don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us if you have any questions regarding the school social work specialization.
Mhm. And Zainab, thanks for saying that too. And just a reminder, we did say it, but people can get their school social worker specialization without having a school-based placement. So for sure in Michigan, the rules are that it's 500 hours of direct social work practice with children and youth. So a lot of people who aren't placed in a school setting, maybe they're at an outpatient children's setting, or they're with girls group, or they're with sometimes even big brothers, big sisters, or I'm just like sort of rattling off. There's a lot of different, I mean, we place a lot of students in child and youth serving organizations. So if the school setting, the school-based placement is a little daunting or doesn't work out for some reason, to Zainab's point, I get calls a lot from people who have to do the training postgraduate, and it's fine. I mean, there is a postgraduate path to it, but they kind of wish they had just done the 2 credits, because 2 classes, and as that count as electives and count as a specialization. And as Zainab said, it's pretty popular. So yeah, these are just some additional resources. There's the school social worker specialization link, and then more information about, there's a national organization, the School Social Workers of America, and those also have state chapters as well, so you can check them out. And then there's also our state chapter, which is the Michigan Association of School Social Workers.
And just to add on to that, for those interested in the requirements beyond Michigan and other states, we recommend you starting your research now, and the School Social Workers Association of America website would be the go-to website to provide just general overview for each state. And welcome to the School of Social Work, and thank you for taking the time to listen to us. And again, reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thanks so much, everybody. So in addition to our presenters and our field faculty, I also want to acknowledge Talia Dyerly. I see you on the call, and I just want to acknowledge you as the online placement coordinator for those of you on this call who will be primarily out of state or kind of outside the Southeast Michigan area, Talia will be your source of all things amazing and true around placing. She's a great resource and really kind colleague who will help you with this process. So I just wanted to recognize Talia. Dr. Yatisha Robinson is also on this call, who's the Assistant Director for Online. Our other colleagues also work with our online students, but work primarily with the residential. So there's just a little bit of difference in communication. Also on this call is our colleague from Office of Student Services, Cerise Carrington. So thank you so much for being on the call now. I'm going to stop the recording, but we're going to stay on until 6:30 or until the last person has no questions, but we're happy to answer questions at this point. So let me just pause the recording.